Well, I shouldn't be wearing a sweater as I could be up dancing right now in the middle of the floor here at Bud Walton Arena. You can hear the music behind me, so
you're jamming right now.
Yeah, I am not at an early New Year's Eve celebration. It's some rave outside in the forest somewhere. But I am talking with Connor O'Gara, who is the senior national columnist at Saturday Down South and at Saturday Tradition. And Connor, you can hear the music going on behind me. I just said there's ugly Christmas sweaters all around. I don't have any. Our friend Ty Richardson is an ugly Christmas sweater aficionado. How many of those do you have?
Currently, I don't think I have any, to be honest. I think I'm past that phase in my life. Once you hit 30, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like the ugly sweater count in the wardrobe, when you have to make that move and you're like, hey, this takes up a lot of space. I live down in Orlando, man. We wear sweaters like 3 days out of the year. So I can't really justify the ugly sweater move process. So, yeah, I think I'm sitting on a goose egg right now.
What's the coldest it ever gets down in where you are in Florida?
So this past Friday night, I had an outdoor socially distanced dinner, and it was the coldest I've been in a long time. It got down into like the low to mid 40s.
Oh, wow.
It was chilly. It was surprisingly chilly. We'll get overnight lows in the 30s, like 38, 39 this time of year, but then, it'll still get up to like 55 midday. So it just kind of depends, but it gets a little bit nippy in December.
A great holiday film was filmed in Orlando. Ernest Saves Christmas takes place in Orlando.
I never knew.
Watched it last night.
I never knew it'd get that cold in Florida. Like every time I've been to Florida, which granted it's summertime, but I've never seen Florida get down to the 40s. That's interesting.
Yeah, every once in a while,
Merry
the
Christmas.
grapefruits and the oranges freeze over. Just like I guess hell would freeze over, Connor, if a group of 5 team ever makes it into the college football playoff and that's expanded to 8 teams. I'm not sure how much of a case Cincinnati necessarily had. I think Texas A&M would have had a better case. Who do you think got screwed the most outside of the playoff right now?
It's A&M. It's A&M just because I think you could make the case that A&M really deserved to make the field over Ohio State and Notre Dame. I thought the Ohio State thing, I accepted it a while ago because I thought that as soon as the selection committee had Ohio State at number 4 in those first rankings ahead of A&M, I thought, all right, unless Ohio State loses, Ohio State's going to stay at that spot. They're telling us we're not concerned about the number of teams. We think they're a better team, and they gave them the benefit of the doubt. I get it. So I moved on from that. But the Notre Dame thing, it's weird because we look at these resumes side by side, and they're really, really similar. I mean, really similar. And if you actually look at when the losses happen, some might say that's recency bias, but I think that kind of has to matter. I saw an A&M team who got smoked on the road against that very prolific Alabama team, a historically prolific Alabama team. In those 2 months since, and Arkansas fans can attest to this, A&M got better. It got better and better. I saw Notre Dame this past weekend look like it didn't belong on the same field as a playoff team. A playoff team who finally was at full strength when it actually got to face Notre Dame. And I would have severe questions about letting in a Notre Dame team who just lost by 24 on a neutral site to Clemson when, all things were supposed to be equal. Clemson didn't have 3 defensive starters out like it did in that first game. It actually had Trevor Lawrence this time. And still, they gave Notre Dame the benefit of the doubt. So I think A&M did everything we could have asked them to do after suffering that one loss into the number 1 team in the country. And you know what? It got a raw deal for how good it finished the season.
Connor O'Gara here with us on Halftime. Connor, so with all this controversy and different things like that, and you've seen the Cincinnati head coach said we need to go back to the BCS or different things like that. So what's the answer to this problem? I mean, I get that there's misconceptions or whatever with the top 4, and I get it, and you've seen people complain it's like it's the same 4 teams. It's because they're the best 4 teams in the country, and it's year in and year out. But I'll play along. So what needs to change to make the people happy? What needs to change to get the mid-majors a chance? What needs to change to just make everybody happy?
Expansion is the only thing, and it's not going to happen until the middle of the decade, but what could happen before then? Because I don't want to say that a group of 5 team absolutely, without a doubt, can't make it into the field, right? I mean, I still go back to that first Houston team with Tom Herman that beat Oklahoma to start off the year and would have had a path through the playoffs if it could have actually finished down the stretch. Of course, if you're a group of 5 team, you have to go undefeated, and you have to beat a Power 5 team that's respected as a contender. That's not an easy thing to do. And in a year like this where Cincinnati wasn't getting those Power 5 opponents, that wasn't going to happen. So I think what can happen, though, is the AAC is now built up to be this respected league. I mean, Cincinnati started off at number 7 in the playoff rankings, despite the fact that it didn't have a Power 5 win. I think that in itself shows progress. It could get to the point where maybe next year, the year after that, if they do have that Power 5 game where they're starting off as the top 15 team in the country, or we could finally get there. Of course, it's only going to take the right way for this whole thing to shake out for one of those AAC teams. But I think that league has boosted its rep nationally to where it's at least more possible. I'm just not going to hold my breath on a Mountain West team to be able to do it. I think it's going to have to come from the AAC, and it would have to come in the next couple of years because there's at least some built-up momentum at this point. But before expansion, I wouldn't necessarily bet the house on that.
Let's put to bed for the college football playoff for the moment. Let's move on to some other things. And obviously some Razorback news came across prior to Saturday. And old Bret Bielema is now the new head coach of the Illinois Fighting Illini. What you make of Bret Bielema coming back to college football and snagging a $4.2 million deal to be the head coach at Illinois?
Good for the can of tuna. Really, really happy that Illinois picked up the can of tuna. Listen, here, I like Bielema. I do. And I actually, I wrote in that same column where I called him the can of tuna in the back of the pantry. I said I think Bielema could still have success as a head coach in college football, and I don't necessarily think that he's bad at his job. I really don't. And I actually banged the drum for him to get the Nebraska job before Scott Frost got it. You know, I said if Nebraska was going to whiff on Frost, that Bielema would have been a good option. But I say that because Illinois got to the point where it's like, look, we need somebody who's had a proven track record in this league. We can't go after the group of 5 thing again. We can't go after an NFL guy and hope that it works out like we did with Lovie Smith. Bielema makes sense, and I actually am talking myself into Bielema more and more because he wasn't working with a bevy of talent at Wisconsin. Some people say that Barry Alvarez was running the show there. It's a whole lot different to win in the Big Ten West versus the SEC West. And I think we're going to see that play out. I think Bielema still knows what he's doing. If he's able to modernize on offense just a bit, you got to be able to stretch the field. You can't always assume that you're going to have these big, dominant offensive and defensive lines. I think as long as he's willing to modernize a touch, he could have success at Illinois. The bar is very, very low for him to be able to exceed. And I think that it made sense for Illinois, given where they're at in their program history, a very desperate program, but someone who, has had success in this division and could have a whole lot more success once he gets a little bit of time there.
Connor, before we let you go, which of the following teams had less of a case to be in the Final Four? Ohio State, with just 6 games played, or Notre Dame? And I didn't like the idea of their win over Clemson being discounted to begin with. I'm not sure what you make of them, what happened in the ACC championship game. But who do you think had less of a case, Ohio State or Notre Dame?
Probably Ohio State. I think Ohio State just only playing 6 games. I mean, what are we doing here if we're just basing this off preseason rankings? That's where you're seeing the most angst, I think, for teams that felt like, well, if that decision was made before the season, then we really didn't have a chance to begin with because Ohio State was going to get the benefit of the doubt despite the fact that against the 2 defenses who are actually decent, Justin Fields didn't look good. And every single time Gary Barta would get up there and talk about Ohio State's playoff resume, he'd tout Justin Fields, say Justin Fields this, Justin Fields that. You know what? Justin Fields was bad, and there are 2 games against good defenses. That defense has not been very good when it's actually been able to be in these spots where teams can stretch the field. Like against Indiana, that defense got smoked. It looks like a defense that lost a ton of talent to the NFL, which it did. I think Ohio State's going to lose that game to Clemson. I really do, and I think it's going to give a lot of people a little bit of this reprieve of, hey, look, they weren't deserving to be there in the first place. You got to play more than 6 games. You can't just assume wins happen. But Ohio State got the benefit of the doubt, maybe in part because of what happened last year in the playoffs, or in part because of the fact that they were sitting there at number 2 in the country coming into the year. But yeah, I'd say Ohio State definitely got a very favorable draw.
Connor, we'll let you go. Merry Christmas. Always appreciate you, man. I'm out next Monday, so Happy New Year to you as well.
Sounds good. Merry Christmas, guys.
Thanks, Connor.
Connor O'Gara. Make sure you check him out at Saturday Down South at CJ O'Gara if you want to follow him on Twitter.